to action. And of course, that connects us to coaching in a way, because I think the cycle of coaching is insight leading to action, leading to increased impact. And that's what we're trying to do in the training as well.
Well, can you, again, people are listening saying 7 minutes, and I had heard, actually a different book I'm reading, Brain Rules, an excellent book on the very few things we know about
John Medina, terrific book. Excellent.
And he talks about 10, which to me said, okay, sounds like about 7. I ought to start putting a lid on it. But maybe you can you describe to people, do you just stop at 7 minutes and say take a break? How do you keep a day's, or how long are your workshops for starters?
They range. We have 3 that are half a day and 1 that's a full day.
Okay. So let's say even for the half day, you get to, you give them that dose. You've filled up the cache, as you say, that's of 7 minutes. How do you then not lose them to emails and voicemails in between, yet not keep pumping them with info?
So perfect. So let me do a rapid fire explanation about how I teach one of the core bits in one of our programs. This is actually in the Coaching Habit book as well. It's a piece around the drama triangle. So the drama triangle is a model based on transactional analysis that says when things get dysfunctional, 3 basic roles play out: the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. And each has a pattern to how it behaves. None of these roles are particularly helpful, and all of them cost you effort and cost you status, and it's a less effective version of yourself showing up. And you can imagine, you could put together a pretty soul-sucking 90-minute lecture on the drama triangle if you really put your mind to it. But here's how we teach it. We say, everybody get up and come over here. And we've laid the 3 roles of the drama triangle out on the floor in a triangle. So you've got the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. I go, this is the drama triangle. It's a model that it says when things get dysfunctional, these 3 roles play out. And I go, what's great about it is you probably can guess what these 3 roles look like. So let's talk about the victim role. What do you think somebody playing the victim role looks like and sounds like? So now within 3 minutes, it's now a conversation rather than a monologue. And now the group is trying to figure out what that role looks like. And I'm like, fantastic, exactly. You know what a victim looks like. Whiny, complainy, blaming other people, never blaming themselves. And then I go, great, so what do you think the advantages of playing that role might be? And again, now the group is not just having content downloaded into their brain, but they're actually working to create the content and the understanding themselves. So they talk about the advantages of playing that role. You take no responsibility, you blame other people, you attract people who keep wanting to save you, all of that sort of stuff. And then you're like, okay, but there's a price you pay. What's the price you pay for playing the victim role? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's like nobody wants to work with you. You feel stuck. You feel disempowered. You feel like there's nothing you can do to shift out of your circumstances. I'm like, exactly. And then we do that for the persecutor role and then for the rescuer role. So you see a bunch of things have changed. One is no PowerPoint, but there's just the 3 roles laid out on the floor. A, B, everybody's standing up and standing around. C, we're now creating this content together. And I'm like, okay, so you understand the roles, you figured that out, that's brilliant. Now, we actually play all of these roles all of the time. And then I'll tell a funny story about how in a single conversation you can actually bounce around all 3 of the roles. And actually I'll enact that conversation out, playing both sides of a screwed up, dysfunctional conversation. So now this is a bit of theater, because I'm teaching something, but I'm being funny as well. So everybody's enjoying this because you see somebody lurching from complaining about, something, being the victim, and then getting a bit shouty about it, being the persecutor, and then being a bit apologetic about it, being the rescuer. So another teaching mode and modality, entertainment, so people are laughing, they're still standing up. And then we're like, okay, so you understand how the 3 roles work and how they play out against each other. Now go stand by the role that you think you play most often. So now people are translating theory to practice. And they're going, okay, I get the theory, but how does this impact me? And we're using somatic learning. So people are literally walking over and standing in the the space of whatever role they've identified for themselves. It's most common that people self-identify as a rescuer, like 90% of people do. Mm-hmm. So you're like, okay, great. And they've got this kind of hit of insight about where they stand, and then they're noticing that 90% of their colleagues are all standing in the rescuer role as well. So that's an insight for them. And then you get to go, so now you're here, now you're standing here in the rescuer mode. How's that working for you? And now people are co-creating the understanding about the price you really pay for being in that role. And now we do that for the other roles as well. And then people go back to their chairs, and I say cluster up in groups of 3. So they do. And I say, okay, here's the task. You've got 7 minutes, and in that 7 minutes, you've got to come up with 7 tactics to get out of the drama triangle. And for each group of 3, I assign them one role to work on. So I say, okay, you're going to work on the victim role. If you're playing the victim role, how would you get out of the victim role? So now they're co-creating this content again. They're figuring it out. They're having a conversation with their peers around what are the tactics to get out of those roles. And then finally, after they brainstorm for 7 minutes, we then, as a group, share those tactics. So there's a way that the group will learn from each other. And as a facilitator, I'll then add 1 or 2 tactics that they might have missed on top of that. So you've got a 45 minutes to a 1 hour session. But you see that there's almost no time where I've actually sat there and lectured and taught them on stuff. I've put them front and center. I've helped them figure it out. I've kind of pointed the way, but they've kind of colored in and fleshed out their own understanding of the concept. And we've used the body, and we've used emotion, and we've used group learning and collective wisdom, all of that to make a very different learning experience.
And that sounds like something that people would be surprised to find out. What do you mean lunch is here? You know,
right.
As opposed to, God, I hope lunch gets here, which
right,
is
exactly.
often the case. And all that interaction, like that is where it just really, you're driving it home. And that is having given so many technical presentations, 20 or 30 minute at conferences, and just to find 3 heads that are bobbing with you and not nodding off.
Right.
It's such a joy sometimes where I'll move and walk and change it up and things like that. And I've had to give 2-day technical training that was anything but interactive.
Right.
But that was unfortunately the requirement, for the technical end. But I just know that the people didn't get much out of it.
Well, here's the thing I believe, Dave, because every learning experience can be just significantly better. And much of it has to do with the facilitator, the teacher, giving up control so as to be in service to the people in the room. Because quite often, and this isn't often an explicit thing, but quite often implicitly, the facilitator is going, honestly, I quite like being the person talking because it gives me high status and it gives me control and it gives me certainty, all these kind of neurological drivers that make you feel better about yourself. But the price that's being paid in the room is that the group's not getting any of that. Even with the technical piece, you're like, I'm going to put up the 25 steps that we need to progress through as a group over the next day. And they're actually they're plastered on the wall on huge posters. And I'm not going to teach them to you. I'm going to say that you're working in groups of 3, and as groups of 3, you've got to figure out how to progress through these 3 steps together. And I'm going to point to the resources so that you can teach yourself. And if you can't figure it out, then I'll hold an impromptu lecture for 5 minutes to explain that key piece that you got stuck on. Now, if you're the teacher, what that means is you spend a whole lot of time sitting in the front of the room going, oh my God, I hope this is working. Because I don't really know. Right. Because I'm seeing stuff, but I don't know how to interpret it necessarily. So it's a place of ambiguity and uncertainty and giving up power. But here's another word for giving up power. It's called empowerment. By empowering those people to guide their own learning and to trust them and to have them figure stuff out, you have to give up some of your power. And that can feel, honestly, awkward to you, sometimes really awkward to the class as well. But it serves a greater good, I believe.
And I think that takes into one of the other points, which is not finding reality to get the behavior change you want. We all say, those of us, whether it's you've got a classroom, whether you have a team, a sports team, or whether you've got a project team at work, is why does everyone have to wait, till I tell them to do something? Why can't anybody think for themselves? Everyone takes some initiative, but then when they do, it's whoa, I didn't say to color yet.
Right.
Nobody put your pencils down, put your crayons down, but it's what we want, and we're fighting the fact that, if you want people to do what they can do, you have to let them do it. So maybe you can go back to that. How do you help people get over that battle of empowering others?
Well, there's not a simple answer to that, but here's the kind of connection I would make. What we're talking about here is being the challenges in front of a teacher are the same challenges you face if you're trying to coach somebody. Because in some ways, coaching is about inviting others to come along for the walk, knowing that you have no control and maybe some influence on them. So if our focus is trying to help managers and organizations be more coach-like, and managers don't really buy that off the top of the heap, because they've had people shoving HR initiatives down their throats now for 3 to 5 years around they need to coach. But when the manager looks at it, they go, wow, so I am flat out busy right now. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed. I've got so much to do. I've got so many metrics I have to tick off. It's a global organization. I've got dotted responsibilities and management duties here, there, and everywhere. Even if I wanted to, when am I going to find the time to actually coach? And that's the challenge we face. That's at the heart of what we do at Box of Crayons. Is we think coaching is an essential leadership skill, but we know most managers are like, dude, I'm too busy. I've got too much else going on. I'm like, I don't have time to add anything on to what I'm already doing. And that, they're completely right. That is absolutely right. So the starting point, I think, is to inhabit the reality of the people you are trying to serve. So I look at managers and I go, okay, what's their reality? One reality is they go, yeah, coaching. I know what coaching is because I see the executive coach come into my boss every month. It's like a 1 hour sit back, chit chat conversation. I don't have time for coaching. And they're like, okay, so let me take this stand. We think coaching can and should take 10 minutes or less to do. And they're like, okay, well, that's interesting because 10 minutes or less. But you know what? My schedule is packed. Here's the second point of resistance. I don't have time to add anything, even if it's 10 minutes. I don't have time to add a 10-minute conversation with my people to my already jam-packed schedule because I've got emails dating back to 1983 I haven't answered yet. And we go, yeah, you're right. That's true. But actually, for us, we're not going to add anything to what you currently do. We're going to transform what you currently do. And then they're like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, let's talk about what coaching means. And actually, we don't even want you to be a coach. And they're like, oh, because that was going to be their next point of resistance, which I don't want to be a coach. I mean, I've met these kind of touchy-feely life coaches, or these kind of slightly pushy executive coaches. That's not me. I'm just a normal manager. I'm just trying to do my job. And I'm like, okay, that's great. We don't want you to be a coach. We want you to be more coach-like. And what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what are the real barriers that get in the way of managers and leaders coaching, and how do we actually address their challenges so we remove these, hitherto slightly invisible barriers to why people don't really take on coaching. All of which is a very long answer to your original question to say, how do you get people to make this, to do what you want them to do? Well, you understand what they're up against, and you make it beneficial to them, because that's the final barrier. Because lots of managers and leaders and organizations go, okay,